Hey everybody, welcome back to Paulius Gaming. My name is Paulius, also known as Paul, and in this episode we are hopefully going to land this bitch on the motherfucking moon. Now we're picking up again exactly where we left off. We are in a somewhat eccentric orbit of the moon, but the first thing I'm going to do is we want to land on the light side, so I'm going to time accelerate until we get to roughly here, which is the terminator line. So then we can actually start planning our descent. Now, there's lots of different schools of thought on how to actually land on the moon. One of the ones that I've seen, which is quite popular with other YouTubers, is get directly over where you want to be, burn in the opposite direction, kill all your horizontal velocity at once, which then basically leaves you dropping down to the planet like a stone. It does work. And I'm not going to tell anyone that they're wrong for doing it that way, except for two things. One, it is really inefficient. As you can see now, we've got a full tank of fuel. That is probably enough to get from lunar orbit back to Kerbin and back to the moon. We're not short on fuel, barring any major fuck-ups. Other thing is, though, it doesn't really take into account the rotation of the moon. So even though you think that you're just dropping straight down, the moon is spinning underneath you, which means that you're actually heading left or right at a good few. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's nice. It's fast enough to screw you over. Now, the way that we are going to do it today is right now we're going to decide where we're going to land by basically we're going to aim on our retrograde vector. We're going to turn ship around again. And we are going to boost, which is going to lower our orbit, and I think somewhere around here would be nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep the throttle up until our orbit intersects the planet, which means we're going to land on it. Well, technically at this point, the line going through the planet means that we are going to crash into it, because we're going to go into it at 500 meters per second, which is pretty damn quick. And I'm going to aim sort of there. And again, bear in mind that this is going to spin. So even though it looks like we're going to land right here, I believe this spins around this way. So we're actually going to be further along. Two main hints with trying to land anything on anywhere. One, do not forget to put the motherfucking gears down. Because without them, if you manage to touch down really softly, you might get away with it. But it's a good idea to actually have something to land on. Second of all, when trying to land any spacecraft, do not look up here. Do not, under any circumstances, look at your craft. Look down here at your gravity ball. Sorry, I'm just choking to death. Look down here. That is just how worked up and how passionate I am for making sure everyone understands this. Look down here at your nav ball. For the simple reason that now it does actually match up the controls, but as soon as you do that, and you've done this a few times as you're traveling along, or simply as you've been going along, you've done that. As you've taken off, you've rotated slightly. Let me just stabilize this with a bit of SAS now. The big thing now is if I press right on my keyboard, my ship is moving to the left. When I press left on my keyboard, the ship is moving to the right. If I try and dive, it comes towards me. If I try and pull up, it goes away from me. In other words, your controls could be completely and totally backwards. Everything you need to know about landing this bitch, or your own bitch if you build this bitch, is you're aiming basically along your prograde vector. As long as you keep that dot on there and keep an eye on your speed and your altitude, everything is going to be fine. Or at least that's the plan. As I said in the last video, make sure you've tapped caps lock so you've got your fine controls on. And the last thing to remember is this altimeter up here is sea level. Again, on the moon it doesn't make a huge amount of difference because it is pretty flat. If you use this exclusively on Minmus, and Minmus has mountains that can reach 4 kilometers up into the air. So you will crash into something while still going. You think you've got 4 kilometers left which I believe is over 3 miles up, and yet you don't. Now at this point the approach is going quite well. We're at a decent speed, we're at a decent altitude. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to speed up time, but not by too much, because again, you're going to pick up speed as you drop, and it is very, 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 very easy for it to get away from you and you to crash into the surface of the moon. Now, what I'm going to do is turn off my SAS and using my nav-ball only, because looking at the top screen is fecking suicide. I mean, you could line it up, make sure your controls match up, but again, it's far easier to do. Look at Jebediah agrees with me. Look at that face, you brave Kerbal bastard. Is what I'm going to do is I'm going to get lined up on that, and I'm just going to do quite a strong burn. This one is more to do with, as you can see, I'm still keeled over quite a bit. This is more about killing some of that horizontal velocity than actually slowing us down to reach the planet. Now, as obviously the way this works is the retrograde vector is the direction that your ship is the exact. It sort of is the direction that now our ship is going in. We want to slow down, so we're burning directly along it, and we've slowed down a little bit too much there. So what's going to happen is, as you start to slow down, this is going to move to the middle. When that vector is pointing straight up, it basically means you're heading straight down, which is backwards, and I'm not explaining this very well. At the moment, as you can see, this is our prograde vector, which this is the direction that we are actually flying in. If you match these up, you'll see up here our nose is pointing in exactly the same direction that we're traveling in. If we go round this way, let's just tap T just to get that stabilized. That means we are facing in the exact opposite direction, which means our engine is pointed in the direction that we're traveling, which means if we fire our engine, we're going to slow down. Now we're coming up to 17, so let's have another quick burn. Not a massive, like, powerful, we're just trying to just bleed off speed. And as you can see, as I said, because we're losing that horizontal velocity, this vector is going to start getting closer to the middle, because it's essentially that we're going to start heading straight down rather than across. And we don't want to lose too much velocity this high up. Basically, because that means we're going to take a very, very, very long time to get down. So we're going to wait until we're at 145 meters per second. That is quite good. Now, I think these landing struts can handle a landing of roughly above 5 meters per second. We've now switched, as you can see here, from orbit to surface. We're at 11, now 10,000 meters up. We're starting to come more or less straight down, so let's try and kill off a bit more speed. Now, if you want to be fancy, the way you can do this is a suicide burn, where you can completely ignore it and then lose all of that velocity and speed and land in one massive burn just before you touch down. But I actually would quite like to survive this. So that is not the way I'm doing it. As you can see, we're now moving more or less back to the middle. We are a little higher than I'd like for us to be coming down this vertical, but it's not too bad. Now we're going at 50. I'm going to cut the engine again. Going to start picking up speed, and when we get down to about 5,000, again, I'm still keeping that dot right on our retrograde vector. As you can see up here, I know I told you never to look up here, but we're actually starting to get quite low. We're getting back up to 100 meters per second again, so I think from this point on, I'm going to leave the engine on just a slow burn. I'm going to try and get us down to about 50 meters per second before we get to 2,000. Because one of the things which is an absolute killer trying to land in is too much thrust, too much burn, and you start going back up. And once you start going back up, you get flustered. If that happens, pause the game, stop for a second, breathe, have a sip of tea or coffee if you're nasty, and then come back to it, because you start trying to overcorrect. Let's see, we're at 2000 now, so I'm going to actually give this quite... Oh, I'm starting to... Well, there we go. I'm going to kill the engine again, just so we don't... Yep, sorry if my talking goes completely to pot at this point. I know I find it difficult to finish a complete sentence anyway. Okay, now we're going to go for quite a powerful burn. We're getting very... We can ignore the... there we go. That starts to move because we actually start to lift off. Now we're going to keep this going. I'm not going to lay off the... There we go. There's our landing shadow. Going to cut again. We're going to boost, boost, boost. We want this to be... And we're going back up. What did I just say? Never to do. We do have quite a bit of horizontal velocity, but that should be okay. And we skid to a stop on the motherfucking moon. As I said before, it doesn't... Don't worry too much about the horizontal velocity. These are, I think, the weakest landing legs they do. And as long as you follow that procedure, you're never going to be coming straight down unless you're lucky enough where your camera lines up. That's why I say ignore this. Because as you're coming down, you start to look at that. You realise if you just tilt your craft just a little bit over to the left, it'll kill all that velocity. And you do it, and instead of tilting to the left, it tilts to the right, and you speed up a bit. And then your brain suddenly farts and you end up dead. So while we're here, let's get Jebediah out of this bitch. And as I said, it's the moon. We don't have to worry about the drop. And if you tap R, you can turn on the rocket pack, which means you can then... God, he just always looks so happy, does Jebediah. You can turn on the rocket pack to get up there, although, as I said, on the surface of the moon, really, I think you've got enough height to just jump back in and grab it. But now, as this is Jebediah's first time on the moon, at least in this save game, let's have him plant the flag. Let's call this Moon Landing for YouTubes. And for the plaque, let's have I can't believe I landed, that's a proper noun, this bitch on the motherfucking moon. Oh, technically, yes, that should be moon landing. And now, if they ever do bring out multiplayer, it is possible to come and read the plaque, so everyone will now know that Jebediah Kerman cannot believe he landed this bitch on the motherfucking moon. Okay, I think we're going to end it here. Next time, we're just going to cover the return, which can be a little bit tricky if you don't know what you're doing. But obviously, you guys have watched all these videos. You've gone and looked at people who actually know how to play this game, like Scott Manley. So you won't be having any problems. Yeah, just as I'd just like to point out, 90% of what I know about this game is from Scott Manley's videos. Just go up to the little search bar, type Scott Manley. I can get you to the moon, I can get you to Minimus, I can get you to a couple of the other planets. Scott Manley, I think, is actually probably at some point going to strap enough rockets to take Kerbin to a whole other dimension. Guy is a genius, I can highly recommend his videos. So on that point, as we look out over this gorgeous Moona Vista, and I was kind of hoping that we'd be able to see Kerbin in orbit, but we can't because that looks pretty. We'll call it a day here. Please come back next time and we'll talk about the return. Once again, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please give a subscribe. Tell your friends. If you didn't like it, go practice anal sex on yourself with a cactus. Thanks very much for watching and goodbye.